Welcome to the BiKoPia podcast. If you want to understand the science behind your everyday ride, you've come to the right spot. I'm Dr. Paul. I'm a bike fanatic and with the doctorate in marketing. Today we're discussing the N+1 Bikes Trap. The topic has special heart to me. I have had as many as 5 bikes before, and I currently have access to 3, excluding the fat bike behind me. That is a surly ice cream truck that is living a second life as a bike skeleton on my wall. It's beautiful. But my shirt even says on the back, my wife says I have too many bikes. And the premise of BiKoPia is that for many, many, many years, just I had this insatiable appetite for wanting more and more bikes, spending more and more time on cycling. And my wife said, "Why don't you monetize it? Why don't you take that extra step?" And it took me a lot of prodding, honestly, to do that. But the essence of that sort of encapsulates itself in this math equation. The math equation is N+1 bikes is the ideal number of bikes that you should have. So let's break that down. So the ideal number of bikes is in the number of bikes that you have plus one. The idea behind that is you're never satisfied. You always want different bikes. Say you start with a road bike, you get a gravel bike, you get a mountain bike, then you get an enduro bike, then you get a cross country bike, then you get a dirt jumper, then you get a tandem. I don't know anybody with tandem, but I've seen a tandem before. You get the point. It's this never ending more, 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 more. And in the essence, that helped fuel me creating BiKoPia, but it also has a special place in my heart that maybe I was wrong. Maybe a lot of you all are wrong. I don't know you, but I know a lot of us out there get in this what I call the N+1 bikes trap. It's that you always think you have to have more bikes, that you always need to do more and more and more. And it's a little bit, in my opinion, a fallacy. And today I'm going to give you a little bit of the science that I've found behind that fallacy, or what I'm calling a fallacy. And there are a few topics that I've researched using my background and my doctorate skills. And one of them is called gear acquisition syndrome, GAS. So it's not eating a lot of protein, having gas. It's just an acronym for gear acquisition syndrome. So basically, that gas is we buy our identity. We upgrade our bikes. We buy more bikes just to because it's what we're viewing as a reflection of our identity. So that's the first one. The second one is hedonic adaptation. So it's the fate of the new bike high. Say you buy a $10,000 bike, 30 days later, you're looking at a different type of $10,000 bike. Maybe it's 5,000, maybe it's not, maybe it's even 500. There's some really cool old clunkers out there that I could get for $500, and I've probably lost over them for years. But would I be happier if I got that bike? I think the high would fade over time based on my research. The next one is the Diderot Effect. It's basically one item forces you to upgrade everything else the match. So we'll break that down in a little bit, but think about it this way is that you could have a brand new bike and it has a carbon frame. It's like, I need carbon wheels. I need a carbon seat post, etc., etc. It is what I'll call a subset of the N+1 bikes trap. And then there's the paradox of choice and why having more options available to you might make you less happy. This is especially true for what I'll call as maximizers, such as myself, is that I try to maximize everything I do. I want to research it to death. I want to make sure I'm getting the most for my money. And then there's this camp of, well, it's good enough. And I don't personally fall into that camp, but I can sympathize and see the benefits of that camp. But the paradox of choice is, will having, I don't know, 5, 10 bikes available to you, just in case that special occasion comes up, will it actually make you happier? The research says no. But let's dive into gas. So, gear acquisition syndrome. So, the concept here is buying for identity. This research comes from two researchers, Herps and Mintz, back from 2021. And their study is gear acquisition syndrome, consumption and identity in popular music. So this study doesn't exactly pertain to the bike industry. So I'm taking a little bit of leap here and I'm applying it to cycling. Now, when I reviewed this research, I could see the parallels all over. Is it 100% scientific making these parallels? No. There could be quirks of the bike industry that are a little bit different. I will say, though, as a cyclist, and this is my personal opinion, is that I have experienced gear acquisition syndrome. I would be very strong or just hypothesize that if researchers were to do the gear acquisition study by Herps and Mintz that in the bike industry that they would find cyclists have the syndrome. I I would love for somebody to do that. Maybe I'll do that someday. So let's dive into gear acquisition syndrome just a bit more. So the idea is we buy the version ourselves that rides the bike. So picture that you're the ideal gravel rider, or you're the mountain biker, or you're the road cyclist. I know pure road cyclists don't like to be called roadies. I ride road, but it's roadies, right? But it's identity, right? And a lot of the times we will get into this comparison game and we'll get into our minds where, oh, I just bought this really cool bike. Oh, look at my friend's bike at the ride. I should get his bike. Like, wow, look at that bike. And you just drop 6, 7 grand on this carbon bike, and you're just like, wow. And the essence of it is you bought it for your identity. And what you bought for your identity, when you compare it to somebody else, you might feel inferior. Um, I have some friends that have $10,000 mountain bikes. I'm on the cheaper end, relatively speaking. I buy like four to $5,000 carbon mountain bikes with the cheaper drive chains and aluminum wire or wheels, wire transmissions. You're not going to sell me on E-tap or electronic shifting right now. I just am not down with that. But the idea here with gas or gear acquisition syndrome is you're trying to craft this whole identity around yourself, and it's on this idealistic concept. And my personal opinion, again, not scientific in this way, is that it's a fallacy, right? I'm a marketer by trade. That is my trade. That is my academic background. Again, having a doctorate in marketing. And I would say that a lot of this is just marketing. Um, that the idea of this identity, it's false. When I started creating content over a year ago, I thought that I had to specialize in an identity of just a pure mountain biker. What I learned is, me personally, I'm in my late 30s. I'm not going to be doing big jumps, for example, right? The fallacy here is I thought that I could just be somebody I'm not. And I think that's sort of the concept of gear acquisition syndrome is you're trying to be somebody that you're not. What I found is I mountain bike, I ride gravel, I ride road. I am all three. The bike industry sort of seems to want to divide you and put you in these little segments, and those segments are really made up of this thing called personas or ideal buyer of a product, right? So you're looking at consumptionism and marketing really driving gear acquisition syndrome of being an ideal anything. And I think as cyclists, it gets us away from this feeling of what I like to always say is feeling like a kid again when we feel like we have to consume, consume, consume to get more, 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 and it's just a fallacy. All right, the next concept is hedonic adaptation. So think of this idea of the moving goalpost. If you're looking at American football, the goalposts are what they kick the football through, right? And the idea is that you feel like you're close and then it moves and it moves and it moves. And the concept really revolves around the idea of your brain gets really used to having nice things quickly. This is based on research from, I'm going to botch this name, but Mariski, 2021. I'll link to it in the show notes if you're curious. But there was a study called the Hedonic Adaptation, the Positive and Negative Experiences. So this goes into why does the excitement fade after you purchase a new bike? I've had that happen. I've had it happen to friends, and I'm currently experiencing this right now. A couple months ago, I bought an Ari Schaefer 3.0 gravel bike. It serves as my road bike, my gravel bike, some light trail use, and I'm still excited about it. It hasn't. quite faded, but I would say from that peak of unboxing the box and going, that was probably for me personally the peak of that bike. And the goalposts are moving. So the excitement of that bike are just slowly, slowly fading away. And it for me, it might take 6 months, it might take a year, but eventually I will look at that RE Schaefer 3.0 and I'll be like, that is a sick bike because it is a sick bike. But I will look at it and be like, you know what? XYZ company just released XYZ model, and it is the creme de creme. It is just so awesome. It is so cool. And, I'm going to experience hedonic adaptation is that Ari Schaefer, I'm just going to get used to it. It's a super nice bike. It's super sick, but I'm going to get used to it. And it's a fallacy. And I think understanding research and understanding what's happening here is really important. So, in this study, it's saying that your brain returns to a baseline over time. So, you have this massive dopamine spike where you're just like, oh, I just unboxed this bike. I just took it for the first ride. I just did the first this, the first that. And I'm blanking on the study, but something related is there was a study where they recorded people going on vacation and they were like, where were you happiest at? And they said, it was the moment that I first saw the beach, or I first did this, or I first did that. Now they were happy, the rest of them on vacation, but it was that first. And in my personal experience, the hedonic adaptation is that basically you have that dopamine spike at the beginning. It's new, something's novel, and then it fades over time as your brain gets used to it. And this is one of the things that feeds what I'm calling the N+1 bike trap is your brain is demanding the next spike in dopamine. Your brain is just craving that dopamine hit. And if you don't become self aware and train yourself on that, you're just going to fall victim to it, this hedonic adaptation. And I've fallen for it. I've seen my friends fall for it. I have one friend in particular, though, who is the like anti hedonic adaptation. I don't know how he does it. He's very frugal and cheap. Maybe that has something to do with it. I feel like I'm pretty frugal, but he takes it to a whole other matter. So maybe if you're a very frugal person and you have a lot of pause before you buy something, maybe hedonic adaptation doesn't do the same thing for you as it does for me. And based on just this observation I'm thinking about right now, comparing myself to my friend, is that I would, my hypothesis would be that some people have different, I guess, spectrums for how this hits them and how they can control their dopamine. I am no dopamine expert. I'm scratching the surface here, and it's not even my academic background, but it gives me pause as a cyclist and as a person. Is just like, am I a victim to my dopamine spikes? The answer is yes for me. The next thing that we're going to dive into with N+1 Bikes Trap is the Diderot Effect. So this concept of the Diderot Effect is that the consumption spiral. So you start up here and you consume, you consume, you consume, you consume, consume, and you just spiral and spiral and spiral. So you get one thing and it forces you to upgrade it, everything else. And I sort of touched on this earlier, but it goes back to say you got like I'll use myself as an example right now. I just bought a RE Schaefer 3.0. Full disclosure, I am not sponsored by RE, and I bought the bike. I think it's a great company. It's a cool bike, so it's relevant in my mind. So I'm using an example. They're not paying me to talk about this. So this is something that I'm really struggling with right now is that I signed up for the Horsey 100, which is a 100-mile pavement ride in May. And then I believe it is June, I am signed up for the Dust Bowl 100 gravel ride. And in my mind, I'm chatting with AI chatbots and I'm trying to maximize my performance for those races. It's just how I'm wired. I'm sure many of you all are wired too. So the idea is that buying one thing, a new thing in my case, this Ari Schaefer 3.0 gravel bike, I want to upgrade everything. And let's break this down a little bit. So I got the base model, amazing carbon frame, but I'm wanting a carbon handlebar so that it reduces vibration for me. I just bought a Redshift suspension stem because I'm getting older and I don't want to get beat up. I want to get carbon wheels. I've never had carbon wheels on a bike, but I'm just intrigued by it. And the AI chatbot's like, it's gonna make you X watts faster, right? And these little things are basically just spiraling and spiraling and just wanting to consume and consume. And this Diderot effect is named after this French philosopher who basically bought this scarlet robe and realized that his entire apartment looked too cheap to match it. And to a degree, when I look at my Ari Schaefer 3.0 or gravel bike, it's this beautiful thing, like that scarf where this effect was originally originated from. And the idea is, I feel like the aluminum wheels are inferior. My drivetrain might be inferior. And what I'm trying to fill out is just basically, are my real wheels really too heavy? Will carbon wheels really make a huge difference? I'm in my late 30s. I'm not gonna win the race. Uh, I'm just trying to complete the race. I feel like this is me personally, is that I'm stuck in this trap right now in this moment of this Diderot effect, and I'm wondering what what is really worth upgrading and what isn't. Am I actually getting utility out of something, or is it going back to what I spoke about earlier of gear acquisition syndrome? Is like its identity, right? And I think the carbon wheels are probably maybe the line in the sand is the suspension stem that has utility. It will let me be less fatigued, especially on my shoulders, my body. It aches in my late 30s. Carbon handlebar, I just know from experience, aluminum handlebar and a carbon one, I'm gonna have vibration dampening. It's gonna make a difference for me, but I guess the Diderot effect is how, in my mind, do you separate the idea that you're in this consumption spiral, which I still am, but how do I separate? Is it for utility or is it for just that identity of gas or gear acquisition syndrome? And uh, I really, personally, I'm going to look into the Diderot effect a little bit more. And all these things that I'm talking about, they're all interwoven. Again, I don't have scientific proof. I can just synthesize or correlate, sort of like taking a string and putting pearls together on it. They call it stringing pearls, and that's what I'm doing right here. But putting all these concepts together, again, I'm calling this the N+1 Bikes Trap. But the idea is eventually, say I upgrade everything on my Ari Schaefer gravel bike, and it becomes basically the equivalent of their top tier bike that I could have bought new. Then I'm gonna look around and I'll be like, oh, look at my mountain bike. I have a Santa Cruz 5010. It's a sick bike, but it's a beautiful carbon frame. But guess what? Drivetrain, other components. I could upgrade those. You know what? Why would I actually upgrade all those things? Why don't I just upgrade the whole bike? Why don't I buy the latest, newest model? I'm sure there's an amazing model out there. I used to have an Ibis Ripley, and I bought the Santa Cruz 5010 because it was a mullet. But right after I bought it, a Ibis Ripley mullet magically appears, and that is irony, my friends, because I love the Ibis Ripley, and I'm very fond of the Santa Cruz brand too. Nothing against either brand or for each other brand, but in my mind, I've already had this effect of the Diderot effect. Is like, oh, I got this new gravel bike. Should I get a other bike and upgrade my Santa Cruz 5010 to this new Ibis Ripley that's a mullet too? And I think it goes back to that French philosopher who got the scarlet robe and upgraded everything in his apartment and basically went broke. Cycling is an expensive sport, and I think we can get out of control really, really quickly. And it's just that self-awareness and understanding what the science behind it, like the Diderot effect and the gear acquisition syndrome, and saying, you know what, maybe I don't need that thing. So that brings us to our last concept, the paradox of choice. So this concept of the paradox of choice revolves around the concept that more is less. So let's let that sink in. More is less. This comes from Barry Schwartz, his 2004 book, The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less. I'm actually reading it right now. I haven't finished the whole book, but I did flip around. I am just, again, just going across the surface. I'm just scratching the surface. But my takeaways from skimming the book and looking at it, and it's based in a bunch of different research studies and Barry Schwartz's experience as a researcher. And a few takeaways that relate to what I'm calling the N+1 Bikes Trap is basically too many options can cause stress, not happiness. And think of this in terms of cycling. Having 5 bikes means that throughout your ride, you're thinking about, should I have taken the other one? And I think this gets especially true, and I'll use 2 scenarios. One is, say you are a road cyclist and you happen to have a gravel bike and it's winter time. So your initial thought is, I'm going to take the gravel bike. It has wider tires, and I'll just, it's my winter bike, especially for road. And I see this happen time and time again with other cyclists. But say it's a beautiful winter day. Say it's actually in the 60s and the pavement's perfectly dry, the sun's shining. You're thinking the whole time, well, you know what? I shouldn't have taken the gravel bike. I should have taken the road bike. And the whole time, instead of just enjoying the ride and getting that experience of feeling like a kid again riding, you're just you're getting unhappy because you're like, I should have been riding my road bike, but I'm riding my gravel bike and I'm not maximizing myself. And I believe it was Barry Schwartz in this book that said you have the maximizers and the people that are good enough. I'm a maximizer. I'm not a good enough person, and I think it's a benefit to me and also a downside to me. A lot of times in my life, I wish I could say, yeah, that's good enough. It's not how I'm wired. A lot of cyclists I see, they are striving to be faster, to be better. I think it's just something that attracts us to cycling. A lot of us is we want to be the best at everything we do. And I think a lot of us fall into the maximizer camp. I'm sure there's some that are into the good enough. Actually, again, thinking my very frugal friend, I'd say he falls into the good enough category. And again, I I wish I could grab more of that with me personally. But if we go back to this idea of having too many bikes will make you less happy. So I'll give you an example of the road cyclist. Let's go to the mountain biker. So I have a trail bike, a Santa Cruz 5010. For riding Kentucky mountain biking, that is all the travel I need. It's not a big travel bike, but occasionally I want to go somewhere where there's bigger things. So I think of Snowshoe, West Virginia. I rented a downhill bike. It was a Trek Session. It was aluminum. It was a very heavy bike. My first time riding a downhill bike, and I the Santa Cruz 5010, taking it down those downhill things with the big, just the downhill. I'm sure I could do it, but it would put me at more risk to probably getting injured, is my theory. And when I came back from that trip, I was like, I want to get an enduro bike. If I go to Asheville, North Carolina, I go back to Snowshoe, West Virginia, I'm gonna ride this enduro bike. But I don't know if I'd be happier or not going and buying an enduro bike when most of my trails around Kentucky, you just need the 5010. I don't need huge travel. So, my initial thought after coming to Snowshoe, West Virginia this past summer was, I need other bike, N+1. It will make me happier. And I'm still struggling with this, y'all. I am struggling with this, but I don't know that I will be happier. I might get into the place, say I get the enduro bike and I go to a local trail. Um, I, I'm gonna be deciding, should I ride the enduro bike? Should I ride the 5010? And that's gonna stress me out. And then let's go back to the Diderot effect, and or it's not the Diderot effect, hedonic, or sorry, it is. Sorry, I'm so twisted up thinking about all this. It's just like, will it actually make me happier having that choice? And the answer is no, no, it won't make me happier having that choice. Now, if I think about this, I was talking to one of my friends who actually does have one of the new Ibis Ripleys, and again, Ibis isn't paying me for this. It's just I know this about the bike is the Ibis Ripley and the Ibis Ripmo are the same frame. The paint job's different. It says a different bike, but if you swap out I believe it's a linkage or something, it's basically the same bike frame, and you can put in different suspension, and you can turn a Ripley into a Ripmo and a Ripmo into a Ripley. So what I'm wondering with the paradox of choice, and we think about the N+1 bikes trap of buying, buying, buying more bikes, is should you buy one bike, say, say you're in Kentucky like me, a Ripley, and if you want to go to, say, Snowshoe, West Virginia, or Asheville, North Carolina, or someplace like a bike park or something, instead of buying a whole other bike, why don't you buy more suspension? And whenever, those 5 or 6 times a year that you go do that, you just swap out the parts. So you have some extra parts and you don't have an extra bike. So you don't have that regret of, oh, I should have taken this bike instead of that bike. Saves room too. So I think as cyclists, we should think about these things. Is the consumption making us happier? Again, as a marketer, I would say the answer is no. And you also have to look at this from the perspective of the bike manufacturers, right? Again, I'm a marketer by professional and academically, and I know a couple things. One, again, we have these things called personas. It's ideal person, and those roll up into segments. And if you look at a cycling website, you're going to have road cycling, gravel cycling, mountain biking, and then that's going to break it down to enduro and trail and downhill and down country. I know that was a thing for at least a minute. And basically, this is just maximizing profit and trying to hit all these niches. And this goes into the identity that I was talking about at the very beginning, is that these companies are trying to sell an identity. And as a marketer, I'm 100% saying that is what we're doing. Well, I am by trade a performance marketer. That means I take big sums of money and I'm sort of like trading stocks, almost buying these media, whether it's Facebook or Google or YouTube or whatever. And I'm trying to get maximum return. This is what these companies are doing by creating all these different bike categories. And there's utility in them, right? If I live next to a downhill park, I'm going to get an enduro bike or downhill bike. Totally makes sense. There is that reason for it too. But what you'll see is the cross selling. So, say the idea of having a trail bike and an enduro bike, even though I only probably need a trail bike. I just I get really caught up in this, and again, being a maximizer not a good enough is I want to maximize everything, and I didn't even go the hoarding tendencies here. That would be a really great topic for other episode. But the idea is, again, getting back to the paradox of choices, all this research that Barry Schwartz did was, and all these studies that he references, that less is more. This goes into minimalism a little bit. I've tried this even in my wardrobe. I bought a finite amount of hangers, and I'm holding myself to, I'm not going to buy more clothes than there is on those hangers. And in my garage, I'm practicing this a bit too, is I have bike stands where I put the wheel in it and roll the bike in. And right now I'm saying, I'm not going to buy more bikes than I have bike stands. And it's doing the same thing with the hanger is if I buy more bikes, I don't think I'll be happier. So right now at my disposal, I have a gravel bike that uses my road bike, and I found it super fast on the road, and I'm beating roadies on my gravel bike with 50 millimeter wide tires. Go figure. Again, marketing and I think fallacies around uh, thin versus wide tires. I'll go there other day. And then I have the trail bike, and then I have access to a vintage mountain bike that I ride from time to time. But uh, I would probably be happier if I didn't have the vintage mountain bike access to it, and just having those two bikes. And if I had to choose one bike, that bike would probably be the gravel bike. And that sounds a little weird, but I could take the gravel bike on mountain bike trails, road, gravel. It's the ultimate Swiss Army knife. Now, I want actual mountain bike because there's great utility difference. I'm not going to be jumping the gravel bike really high because that's freaky. I've done it. I feel very uncomfortable. So there's a difference between having one mountain bike and a gravel bike. Totally get it. But do you need a road bike and a gravel bike? My theory is no, you just need the gravel bike. Do you need an endurance bike and a gravel bike? I would say you just need the gravel bike. And by gravel bike, I mean a road frame with wide tires. And again, this is my personal biased opinion, but when I'm looking at all this research and my personal experience being a cyclist for a long time, that's what I come back to. All right, so the conclusion of the N+1 Bikes Trap. Again, I started BiKoPia because I would say I'm still in N+1 Bikes Trap, as in the ideal number of bikes is the number of bikes you have plus one. I want to upgrade my bikes, my gear, all these concepts roll together. But I think this goes back to the paradox of choice, and Barry Schwartz is right. Is more is less. And this is the counter argument that I'd like to present is that the goal isn't N+1 bikes. That equation, it just could lead to unhappiness and an empty wallet, to be really, really candid. So I want to propose another equation. It is N-1 bikes. And N-1 bikes is the ideal number of bikes is the number of bikes you have minus one. So this is for you all out there that probably have more than two bikes. Maybe that is the qualifier, so you have more than two bikes. So if you have, say, 3, 4, 5, 12 bikes, I would argue that N-1 might be an equation that you want to look at. I would look at these bikes and say, am I happier? Am I having decision fatigue that's making me unhappy? Am I having regret when I'm riding the bike instead of enjoying the ride? Am I thinking, oh, I should have brought this bike or that bike? Do I feel like I need to upgrade the bikes? And when I boil it down to, and this is me personally, is that I don't think that a lot of bikes are going to make me happier. I think you need to find the one or two bikes that actually make you forget that the math equations even exist. So if you have the bikes that, I don't have to have other bike to be happy. Buying something else won't make me happy. I think that's the key. That's the essence of it. And again, I struggle with this all day, every day. I'm gonna probably fail later today. I'm probably gonna go on a bike manufacturer's website or a Pink Bike or singletracks.com or something like that. I'm gonna read about this cool new bike. I'm like, oh, I wish I had that bike. But I think the key here is I need to pause and I need to reflect. And the research is showing this, and in future episodes, we'll dive deeper into this. But I can say as a marketer, these bike companies, they have to sell bikes to stay in business. I don't really fault them for that. I get it. But as a consumer, I have to give pause and protect myself. Is this piece of gear, is this bike gonna make me happier? And chances are it's no. Now, if there's utility, like actually helping protect my body, like with the suspension stem or carbon handlebars that reduce vibration, yeah, that's a good thing. But if I'm thinking about, well, these carbon wheels will save me X watts, or being a weight weenie and upgrading this and this and this to make the bike lighter so I can get save watts, and I'm gonna shave my legs so I can save watts. I would argue is this sort of goes back to the gear acquisition syndrome, and the identity is and I would say like roadie in particular, if you're shaving your legs and you're not a pro cyclist, you're just trying to live to the identity, and that's marketing, you all. That's just marketing. Uh, you might have nicest bike, you might have the nicest gear, you might look like a professional cyclist, but you know what? You're not going any faster. And I'll even say this: there's this Tour de Loup race in Louisville, Kentucky every year. And a couple years ago, I was on an Ibis Haka MX that had 40 millimeter wide tires. It was Maxxis Rambler, so they're not like super knobby, but they got knobs on those tires. And there was this local bike shop that has the sponsored road bike team, and they probably weren't racing me. I'm sure they would smoke me if they're really trying. But me and my friends, one of my friends was on a road bike. I was on my gravel bike. Um, Actually, a couple of my friends. I mean, we're in decent shape. We beat them. We beat them on gravel bikes. And it just gives me this thing, and I'm really honing on the gravel bikes here, but I don't know if you should have a road bike. And I would say most people, a gravel bike with 40 to 50 millimeter wide tires, you're probably gonna be awesome and be happy. And I would say the same thing to mountain bikers are thinking about, should I have that enduro bike or that trail bike? Depending on where you are, maybe the enduro bike, like if you're in the hills or the mountains of Colorado or Snowshoe, West Virginia, yeah, the enduro bike makes sense. But if you're in Kentucky or somewhere with rolling hills or something like that, you know, the trail bike's probably just fine. And I just want us all to pause and think about it. It's like happiness comes from experiences and not buying things. And that's the essence of the N+1 Bikes Trap, is that all these different scientific theories roll up and support it. And again, these are all hypotheses. Someday maybe I'll actually do the hardcore research to prove it. But my theory is the one trap is that consumerism and all these we'll call them insecurities that make you feel like you have to have this identity and acquire and you have to have all this choice. I think all of it's making us miserable, absolutely miserable. And I would challenge each of you all to have a self-reflection today and think about your cycling habits, the bikes you ride, the gear you want, what you're lusting after. And I would say, should you sell a bike if you have more than two bikes? Like if you have 3, 5, 12 bikes, should you sell bikes? Should you sell 5 bikes? Will that make you happier? And these are questions you should ask yourself. It's going to vary from person to person, but I think at the end of the day that we have a lot of reflecting to do as a society, especially here in America, and what makes us happy and what gets us back to that feeling of feeling like a kid again. If I go back to the essence of the sport, is I remember being a kid just riding my bike. It was a track. It was blue. It was not like an amazing bike at the time. I thought it was the coolest bike in the world, just downhill with my friends. That's the feeling I personally want to capture every time I ride a bike. And I think a lot of you all, that probably resonates with you and you feel the same exact way. So have an awesome day. Think about all these concepts that we discussed, say, this bike science, and think about how it relates to you. Until next time, see you later, you bikeopians. Peace. This is Dr. Paul.